You ever wonder what goes through a man's mind when he knows somebody's watching him die? Not watching like you watch now. Safe, curious, watching through glass ground so fine it bends light into a crosshair. The Hurtgen Forest, November 44, smelled like wet pine and iron. We'd lost 11 boys in 3 days to a ghost. No muzzle flash, no sound, but the crack that came after Tommy or Jenkins or whoever stopped moving. Captain Reese told us the Kraut was SS, trained in Bavaria, patient as winter. He was killing us one breath at a time, and we couldn't even see where God put him. Then Corporal D'Angelo, this kid from Pittsburgh who fixed radios, he got an idea. Funny thing about desperate men, they start thinking like the enemy. The Hurtgen Forest sits on the German-Belgian border. 50 square miles of hell that swallowed entire divisions whole. We went in there September of 44, right after the breakout from Normandy. Supposed to be a stepping stone to the Roer River dams. Control the dams, control the floodplain, open the path to the Rhine. That's what they told us anyway. What they didn't tell us was that the forest would chew us up for 6 months straight and spit out what was left into graves nobody marked. I was PFC with the 19th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Battalion. Just a rifleman, nothing special. We weren't scouts or rangers or any of that. Just regular Army infantry expected to take a hill the maps called Hill 232. 60 of us left in the company by mid-November, started with 180 back in September. The rest were dead or wounded or shipped out with trench foot so bad their toes came off black. The forest itself, I can still see it clear as yesterday. Pine trees so thick you couldn't see 30 feet in any direction. Triple canopy, they called it. Artillery was useless because the shells would hit the treetops and explode, sending wooden shrapnel down like knives. We called them tree bursts. They'd kill you just as dead as steel. The mud was ankle deep everywhere. Your boots never dried. Your socks rotted on your feet. It rained every day, this cold November rain that soaked through wool and settled in your bones. And the smell. God, the smell, wet wool and pine sap mixed with cordite from the constant shelling, gangrene from the aid station 50 yards back where the medics worked in holes in the ground, iron. That's blood. You smell enough of it, you start tasting it in the back of your throat. The forest had its own weather, its own gravity. Men who went in weren't the same coming out. If they came out, we'd been stuck on the same ridgeline for 4 days when I'm telling you about. Orders were simple. Advance 200 yards and dig in. Reality was something else. 11 men dead in 3 days, 23 wounded, 0 yards gained. And the reason was the sniper. Nobody had seen him, not once. No scope glint catching the light, no muzzle flash. Just that crack, sharp and flat, like someone snapping a thick branch right beside your head, and another man would drop. Always a headshot or upper chest, always one round. The Germans were rationing ammunition by then, late in 44, but this one wasn't. Somebody captured a Wehrmacht prisoner from the 275th Division who told us the sniper's name. Obergefreiter Keller. Said he was SS, trained at the Mountain Warfare School in Bavaria. Said he had 32 confirmed kills, and that's just what they knew about. Corporal D'Angelo was 22, from Pittsburgh, radio man. He'd survived Kasserine Pass in North Africa back in 43, where we got our teeth kicked in by Rommel. His hand shook when he wasn't working on equipment. Not all the time, just sometimes. He'd stop mid-sentence and his fingers would tremble and he'd shove them in his pockets and look away. He carried a rosary in his left breast pocket and a photograph of a girl he never talked about. I asked him once who she was. He just shook his head. Private Hoskins was from Tennessee, 19 years old, couldn't stop talking about deer hunting with his father in the Smokies. Took a round through the shoulder 2 days before and refused evacuation. Said he'd seen what happened to the boys they carried out. Most didn't come back. Rather take his chances with us. His shoulder was infected. You could smell it. Sergeant Thorne was regular Army, 16 years in. He'd lost his entire squad at Omaha Beach on D-Day and came back to duty 2 weeks later. Didn't talk, unless he was given orders. His eyes had this flat look like he was seeing through you to something else, something far away. And me? I was mid-20s, drafted in 43, from a farm outside Columbus. I hadn't fired my rifle at a visible enemy in 3 weeks. Just shot at shadows and sounds and empty woods. You pull the trigger enough times at nothing, and you start wondering if you'd even recognize something to shoot at. We were in a foxhole, me and D'Angelo, dawn of November 16th. Hoskins was 40 feet to our left heating coffee over a little trench stove. I remember thinking how good that coffee smelled, how I'd give anything for a hot cup. Then, crack! Hoskins dropped the canteen and slumped forward. No scream, just this soft sigh like he was disappointed. Sergeant Thorne dragged him into the hole, but there wasn't any point. Exit wound the size of a fist. Hoskins died holding that photograph of a woman nobody recognized. His eyes stayed open. Thorne had to close them. That was the 8th man. The company stopped moving after that, just stopped. Captain Reese tried everything. Smoke grenades, didn't work. Sent men in pairs, lost 4 more. Tried waiting the sniper out, but he had all winter, and we didn't. Morale was gone. Men stopped writing letters, stopped talking, just sat in their holes, staring at the mud. That's when D'Angelo came to me and Thorne. It was maybe an hour after Hoskins. D'Angelo was holding a stick he'd stripped from a pine branch about 4 feet long, and his helmet was in his other hand. "I can find him," he said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. Thorne looked at him. "How?" "He shoots heads, always heads. We give him a head." Thorne didn't say anything for a long time. Then he nodded. "You'll need Vickers." Vickers was a farm kid from Iowa, 20 years old, best shot in the company. He'd grown up hunting, could hit a running rabbit at 100 yards with iron sights. Quiet boy, never smiled. D'Angelo explained it to us there in the foxhole. We'd tie the helmet to the stick with bootlaces, raise it slow above the rim, 3 feet to the left of where a real man would stand. If the kraut took the bait, the angle of the shot would show his position. Then Vickers would take the real shot. One chance. Maybe 90 seconds before the sniper figured it out and moved. "What if he don't shoot?" I asked. D'Angelo looked at me. "He will. He's killed 8 men. He thinks he's safe. That's what my uncle used to say about deer. They come back to where they feel safe." "The kraut's not a deer," I said. "No," D'Angelo said, "but he thinks he's safe." We tied the helmet to the stick with laces from Hoskins' boots. Seemed right somehow, using something of his. Thorne positioned Vickers 30 feet to our right with a clear line on the woods ahead. D'Angelo gave him a compass bearing based on where the other shots had come from. 70 yards out, maybe 80. Somewhere in a stand of spruce trees. I held the stick. Don't know why it was me. Maybe because my hands were steadier than D'Angelo's. Maybe because if it went wrong, better me than him. I laid flat on my stomach at the edge of the foxhole, the stick horizontal in my hands. My heart was hammering so hard I thought the Kraut would hear it 70 yards away. "Slow," D'Angelo whispered beside me, "like you're scared, because you are." I started raising the helmet 6 inches. The forest was dead silent. No birds, no wind, just breathing, mine and D'Angelo's, and somewhere Vickers waiting. 12 inches. 18. The helmet wobbled because my hands were shaking now, too. I couldn't stop them, couldn't breathe right. Every second felt like an hour. I kept thinking he'd see through it, thinking the next round would find me instead of the medal. Praying without words, just that shapeless please, please, please you pray when you're terrified. 2 seconds, 5, 10, then crack. The helmet spun off the stick and hit the mud behind me. I dropped flat, ears ringing like church bells. Couldn't hear anything. Couldn't hear D'Angelo shouting. Couldn't hear Vickers' M1 bark twice, bang, bang, fast and sharp. Couldn't hear the heavy thump 70 yards out. Just the high whine in my skull and the smell of burnt powder hanging in the cold air. When my hearing came back, D'Angelo was saying, he's down, over and over. Sergeant Thorne was already moving, sending Rodriguez and Becker forward to confirm. I sat up and looked at the helmet. Clean hole through the crown, right where a man's forehead would be. Perfect shot. The German had fallen for it. Rodriguez and Becker came back 10 minutes later dragging a body. I remember thinking it was small. Too small. When they dropped him beside our foxhole, I saw why. He wasn't a man. He was a boy, maybe 19. Blonde hair, face like something from a church painting. Smooth, young. He was wearing a Zeltbahn camouflage smock, SS runes on the collar. The Carabiner 98K beside him had a Zeiss scope scratched and taped from use. 32 notches carved into the wooden stock. Vickers' round had caught him in the throat. The second round hit his chest. Probably dead before he hit the ground. They'd found him in a spruce tree 40 feet up. He'd built a little platform with branches and a camouflage net. Had 3 days' worth of rations up there. Black bread, hard cheese, a canteen. A rope ladder hung from the trunk. He'd been climbing up and down to move position so we couldn't triangulate his location. Smart, patient, professional. Becker found a diary in his pack, small leather thing written in German. Thorne couldn't read it, but the chaplain came up later and translated parts. One entry stuck with me. November 14th, 3 Americans. November 15th, 2. They do not learn. November 16th, 1. I think they have stopped trying. He'd written that the morning he died. Nobody celebrated. Rodriguez spat on the body. Thorne grabbed his collar. "Bury him," Thorne said. "Sarge, he killed Hoskins." I said bury him. They dug a shallow grave beside the tree. No marker, no ceremony, just mud and silence, and the sound of entrenching tools biting frozen ground. D'Angelo didn't help. He sat against a stump holding that helmet with a hole through it, staring at it like it was something holy. Or cursed. I couldn't tell which. With a sniper dead, the company moved. 200 yards in 3 hours. Fastest we'd gone in a week. We took Hill 232 by dusk. Cost us 6 more dead, 14 wounded. The hill was worthless. No strategic value. Just frozen mud and shattered trees and the knowledge that we'd paid for it in blood. The 19th Infantry stayed in the Hurtgen until December 3rd. Of the 180 men who'd gone in back in September, 41 walked out. The rest were dead or wounded or missing or broken by trench foot and exhaustion and something the doctors didn't have a name for. D'Angelo took shrapnel to the leg on November 28th. They evacuated him to a field hospital in Belgium and then stateside. I never saw him again. Vickers died 2 weeks later in the Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. Took a mortar round in a foxhole outside Bastogne. Sergeant Thorne made it all the way to Germany, survived the war, went home to Michigan. I heard he never talked about the Hurtgen, not once. The Hurtgen offensive failed. We never took the Roer dams in time. 33,000 Americans died or were wounded in that forest. 33,000. More than D-Day, more than Market Garden. And a month after we left, the Germans launched the Bulge, and everything we'd done became pointless. The Army buried the Hurtgen in casualty reports and after-action summaries. Too many dead for too little ground. Too ugly. Too much like a mistake. I don't tell people I killed anyone in the war, because I didn't. Vickers did, but I was part of it. I held the stick, and 60 years later, I still see it sometimes. Not in dreams exactly, just flashes. The helmet rising, the way it wobbled in my shaking hands, the crack, the spin, and that boy's face. 19 years old, blonde hair, 32 notches on his rifle. Sometimes I wonder if he saw it. If, in that last half-second before Vickers' round found him, he knew the helmet wasn't real, or if he died thinking he'd done his job one more time, thinking he was safe in his tree with his bread and his cheese and his patience. What I remember most isn't the violence. It's the smell, pine sap and wet wool, iron and mud, the way the rain never stopped and the cold never left your bones. The Hurtgen had its own weather, its own rules. Men who came out weren't the same, not because of what they'd done, because of what the forest made them willing to do. I don't know if we were brave or just desperate. Maybe there's no difference when you're cold and wet and watching your friends disappear one bullet at a time. D'Angelo didn't get a medal for the helmet trick. Vickers didn't either. The Army doesn't give medals for killing boys in trees. They give them for taking hills. We took the hill. 49 men died doing it. I don't remember all their faces anymore, just their names. The ones I wrote down in a notebook I lost somewhere in Germany. Hoskins, Jenkins, Tommy, 46 others. The German sniper, Keller. I think about him more than I should. He was good at his job. Too good, and his job was murder, same as ours. The difference is we got to go home and call it liberation. I don't know what his mother called it. I don't know if she ever found out where he died or if they told her he fell in some heroic last stand. He didn't. He fell for a helmet on a stick because he was 19 and tired, and maybe his eyes weren't as sharp as they'd been a week before. Maybe he was starting to believe his own notches. The Hurtgen took 33,000 Americans, and nobody remembers it. We don't build monuments to mistakes. We lost that forest 3 times before we learned the Germans didn't care if we took it. They just wanted us to bleed, and we did. We bled into the mud until the snow came and covered the graves we didn't have time to dig. Some nights I wake up and I'm back in that foxhole, holding the stick, waiting for the crack. Not scared, just waiting. Like some part of me never left. Like I'm still there in the mud and the rain and the smell of pine and iron, and all of this, everything after, is just a dream I'm having while I wait for my turn. D'Angelo wrote me a letter in 1947. Said he'd gotten married, had a daughter, couldn't sleep without the light on. Said he still saw the helmet spinning. I wrote back, but the letter returned. No forwarding address. I hope he's all right. I hope he stopped shaking. I hope he knows that trick he pulled saved lives. even if the men whose lives he saved are just names on a monument nobody visits. I don't know why I'm still here, and Vickers isn't, or Hoskins, or the 47 others. I just know that Forrest is still there, across the ocean, and the trees don't remember who won. They just grow over the graves and the foxholes and the places where boys like me and boys like Keller learned what we were capable of when we got desperate enough. And that helmet with a hole through it, I wonder sometimes what happened to it. If somebody kept it, or if it's still there in the mud, rusting away under the pines. Either way, it did its job, just like the rest of us.